Can you hear me okay?
Loud and clear. You have a nice
Awesome.
mic.
I do. I'm a YouTuber, so I have what every YouTuber has. I have the Yeti.
Shibby. I have a Blue Yeti as well. I'm going to send you my real ID in-game so you can add me, and then we'll get started. So
Cool.
there it is. And I'm on NA server.
It should be too.
What should we call you? Because you have crashed the desktop and...
My in StarCraft name is BitShift, so we'll go with that.
BitShift.
Yes.
Nice. You can plug your YouTube channel in the chat if you want to as well.
No, that's fine.
Okay.
No need for crossover there. I do music lessons.
Cool.
Yeah.
Did you send the friend request?
I am sorry. I'm on kind of two different computers, so it's a little bit slow.
No problem.
Okay,
Got it.
just- Cool.
I invite you. And now it's a party.
Awesome.
I gave you party lead.
Okay, so what do you want to start with? Just kind of looking at a replay and
Yeah, so you
what's
wanted to think about having multiple sessions over time to kind of rank up and improve. So
that was my plan. Yeah.
the best starting point would be to see where you are right now and what your fundamentals look like, because moving up the ladder is a lot less about finding that secret build and more about just figuring out what your strengths and weaknesses are and how to really tighten up your weak areas so that you're just overall a stronger player in all situations. So yeah, you can just load basically any game that you felt like represented your ability thus far. It's not necessarily a game that you're proud of. It's usually better to see matches where you're kind of put into uncomfortable situations, because that's where the knowledge of the coach has the most value.
Okay. Yeah. Sounds perfect. Okay. So this one I played last night. Yeah. This was last night. This was actually in one of those automated tournament things. So I got matched up with a guy who was a good bit better than me. I think he had a good 500 or 600 MMR more than I did. But I feel like I played, to the best of my ability and did okay. So hopefully this is a good one to look at.
Normally for these you can pass me the lobby host, but you can go 2x through this. It's not a very long game, so we can just...
Can I send you host now, or do I have to do that?
It's too late. Okay, so I'll type up notes for you during this so that you have some homework. There's usually a lot that goes into an hour session, so that just gives you tangible stuff. And then as we go through, I'll try and emphasize maybe the 1 to 3 most important things for moving up, just so you can kind of figure out what to prioritize first.
Okay, yeah, that sounds excellent.
So the first thing that's usually a point where we can do some critique is your opening build and what you want to accomplish in the early game. So the build that I use is 13 Overlord, 17 Hatch, 18 Gas, 17 Pool. I have a class on why that's the build that I go for, and mainly the principle is reaching 16 workers on minerals in the main, which you have done with your build. So it's not like the difference between my build and your build is going to be hugely impactful. It's just a matter of preference of how safe do you want to be, what is your sort of game plan with ZVT. So just for your perspective, what do you like to accomplish against Zerg versus Terran? How do you win? What are you going for?
Are you asking that rhetorically, or do you want me to answer?
I would like an answer. Just to kind of help you do you better. Because
Right.
you shouldn't be a slave to whatever the coach tells you to do. Like, having some direction is good, but it's also nice to get context of what you want to do.
Right. So usually my game plan, I used to do, like I would hatch first, and then just try to defend the Reaper, and then get into a mid-game that way. And I eventually kind of hated that, because I just felt like I was on the back foot, like the whole game. So I do pool first, then the hatch and the gas, and I'll definitely watch your your session on like why you would go pool before, or whatever your build is. I'll definitely look at that. Mostly though, my game plan is I like to try to get like 3 bases saturated as quick as I can, usually staying on 1 gas, and trying not to die. And then once I have 3 bases up, I figure that's when I start to become stronger. So I try to just pump out a lot of Lings and Banes. I usually either do Muta, or lately I've been playing Hydra, and just trying to like use the big mineral economy advantage during the mid game to put pressure on him, try to keep him off of his third and that kind of thing. So that's sort of my rough idea.
Cool. We'll pause for a second and I'll give you some tips from what I've seen so far in this one.
Okay.
So 19 Overlord is a really important one to just keep your early game clean. Another one is the 29 Overlord. And you could take it at 30. That would be fine too. So we'll say 29 Overlord or 2 Overlord at 32. That's one of the quiet ways that you mess up your macro in the early game. I've even had problems with this at a GM level, where my early game is just slightly inefficient because I'll get blocked at 36, I'll get blocked at 44, and better players would not be blocked at that time. They're making more drones, more links, more everything over time. So 32 supply is one. If you forget it at 29, you can make 2 at 32.
Does it make any sense to try to take the third hatchery at 30 supply and then wait on the Overlord? Or is that just going to end up in a supply block?
You can do that. That's fine as well. If you're going to do that and you're trying to dodge the Reaper, either you need to know that the Reaper is not going to kill your drone, or you hide it early. One thing that I do sometimes is I'll make my 19 Overlord, and then I'll make my 20 drone, and I'll send it somewhere like here. And then whenever the Reaper is harassing my natural over at this location, I'll get the drone and I'll take my third base. That's another sneaky build you can do. If you want to do that, you should pull off gas fully after your link speed, just so you have the minerals to do that.
Oh, okay, I like that.
Yeah, another nice timing, a couple timings I could say against Terran. 4 minutes is a good time to sack Overlord to see production. Sometimes they'll deny it with Marines, but seeing the Marine count is a scout in and of itself, because you can rule out stuff like huge numbers of Hellions or mass air, stuff like that. If you saw at 4 minutes that it's Banshee, the first Banshee will usually hit your base at around 4:30 to 5 minutes. If you're not able to get a scout for whatever reason and you think it's not Marines, you can go 5-minute blind spores against Terran. That ends up helping out a lot, especially when Terran goes for stuff like a Hellion drive-by at one base and then a Liberator into a different base. You just have something that can contest that type of stuff.
Right.
So you can go ahead.
Do you ever do OV speed in ZVT?
Yes.
Or is that worth it?
I like Overlord speed on maps where it's difficult to get a scout of their production. So the big map, Acolyte, is a map where I like going for Overlord speed. Just because it's a very long rush. It takes a long time for your Overlord to get over there. And it's pretty easy for them to deny scouting against slow Overlords. But on this map, it's the shortest rush map. Yeah. So usually you can get an Overlord that goes up here, and then you can dive in here and see the production setup.
Okay. Makes sense.
So let's look at your hotkeys real fast. You have your army on 1. I'm guessing some of this stuff is custom. Like, are you actually pressing 6 for your hatches? Or is that just
I use the core, so it's all over.
Okay, sweet. So a couple key things that'll help you out, especially in ZVT and ZVP, is having a queen group for your creep and defense queens. I usually leave my inject queens off hotkey, but the ones that are creeping and fighting, I keep on a hotkey. It looks like you have them on your third key now.
I actually do. I think I'm just so frazzled in this game that all my queens are in weird places.
Yeah.
But that is usually what I do, is just keep a queen group for the creep and defense queens.
Are we making more? Having around 7 queens is a good amount, but more
like
is...
in total, or?
Yeah, total.
Or just...
7 total queens is nice because you get 4 queens for defense and creep, and then 3 for injecting. It's usually a good amount. How often do you mouse up in the corner and check your worker count?
Relatively frequently, I think.
That's one of the nice things to just check, especially after you've taken some damage, of how much more do I need to drone? Because in a case like this with 57, if you moused up there and saw 57, it would be a great move to just make a full cycle of your larva of drones toward your 4th base.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like one of the weakest parts of my understanding is usually around like trying to get the 3rd and 4th droned up. I rarely feel like I don't usually feel confident like, oh, I should be building drones or I should be building army or whatever. I struggle with that a lot, especially in ZVP actually.
Yeah. Well, you just went up to 75 workers, which is awesome. The key thing that makes that possible is the power of Zerg units on creep. This game, you were behind in all the early and mid game, so droning the 4th base wasn't something you could defend in this instance, but in most cases, if it's an even situation, you can defend that economy size.
So that was more or less the right decision. I was just behind.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the subtle secret to moving up in leagues is being able to defend a greater and greater economy size. They've been doing analysis on this since Wings of Liberty of why are some players GM and some players are Gold League. Well, mainly that's your ability to manage larger and larger economies, because an economy is a flexible resource where you can make whatever composition meets the situation best. And we're dead. Cool.
Dead a while ago.
So I have notes for you of the build. I'll get the class. Yo, Wednesday. Thanks for the host. Who did I see? I saw Ragnarok host you recently, and I checked out your stream. You look really cool. Okay, so here's the class link I put in the email document as well. We're doing some Zerg coaching right now. The student is Diamond 1. So we're putting in bold and red the 70 worker economy. The more often you get that, the better. In addition, 4 queens for defense is an excellent choice, pretty much always. Pretty much.
Okay.
Okay. So you can load another game now and pass me the lobby host once we get in.
Okay.
So you right click me and perfect.
Yes, yes. I don't get to play StarCraft with friends very often.
Oh. But now you can. There are a lot of really friendly people in the chat here, so if you wanted custom games, that's a good place to ask. And in the Discord as well, now that you have the link. Okay. I think I've seen this person or played against them. I feel like I played against them a long time ago. Cool.
I think this game, I don't remember exactly. I think I ended up losing my 3rd to like a 2-1-1, which happens a lot.
Mm-hmm. Do you know about the magical time to make Zerglings?
No, I don't, clearly.
420.
That's easy enough to remember.
So you got your queens, ling speed. The timing of the ling speed is surprisingly important because that's map control basically. When ling speed kicks in, if you're against single reaper or mass reaper, that allows you to push out and defend your 3rd. And it's kind of your world, unless you are against mass blue flame hellion, and then you're in a world of trouble.
Right.
So 3rd base, nice. Another fundamental is overlord positioning and spread. Usually the way that I prioritize it is I have one overlord that kind of looks for this location. You want to see the pedestals on the map and where you can keep it safe against Marines. This map and some other maps, they really work hard to try and kill your first overlord with Marines. So just having some conservative paths where you're able to retreat to a high ground position if they try and do that early is really nice.
Okay. The place where I stuck the first overlord, does that make any sense?
That's okay.
Kind of the same thing I was worried about Marines. So
The downside is it's not getting any useful information right here. If you flew it into the main, you would be able to get a really good scout of what they're going for. It would be Hellion Banshee into Mech.
Okay.
Your choice of what to spend your gas and tech on is good, I think. If you're against 2-1-1, going for a lair doesn't help you at all. Usually you would go double Evo. My mindset for ZVT, in terms of what I want to get for my gas, would be Ling Speed first, and then I want to get 1-1 melee if I'm against the double Medivac Marine. If I'm not, then going Evo Chamber Bane Nest as you have is really nice because you have Banes to deal with Hellions and Hellbats, and you can take an upgrade.
And you would do that before layer? Sorry.
Yes. The layer doesn't really accomplish much because you think about the value that's been invested in the game right now. There are a bunch of Hellbats, which are mineral-only expenditures, 3 per 50 gas. The starport costs a lot of gas, and there's Cloak, so they're going to try and gain value from the Banshee with Cloak. Mm-hmm. The only thing you can really leverage for your lair, you could take Bane Speed, but you're defending, so Bane Speed wouldn't really help you much. You could make a Spire, potentially, but you don't really have the gas income to make mutas. And Overseer is really the only thing that you can leverage from your lair that would help you against the Banshee, but you could also accomplish that with a Spore. So usually I would get, in this case, let's say we scouted this at 4 minutes, and we saw Hellion production, Banshee production, and then Stim. I would say, alright, it's going to be some Hellbat Banshee pressure into Bio. So I want to take a Carapace upgrade from the Evo so that I get some tempo for upgrades. I do want to get a lair so that I can make an Overseer to clean up the Banshee and it doesn't kill workers going between the bases. And maybe a bunch of Queens and a few Banes to kill these Hellbats. And then you'd be good to go to drone your third base.
Okay. Would you stay on 1 gas or
I think more? 2 gas is good. As a general progression, usually you go for 1 gas up to 2 base mineral saturation, then 2 gas, and then you go for rest of your gases, maybe 5 to 6 gases, once you have 3 base mineral. If you're going for Lingbane Hydra, you want 5 gas, 80 drones, we'll say 70 to 80, just so you have some room. Hydra Lingbane, and then you can go 7 to 8 gases, 80 drones for Lingbane Muta. Hydras are more of a complement to a Lingbane army against Terran. They're not the main idea. Mm-hmm. So if you go for too many gases, you feel like you have to make more Hydras or more Banes, which makes your army less efficient. Zerglings are very expensive for larva, but for the amount of value that you get for the HP, the attack value, the move speed, Zerglings are just really, really good. So having 80 drones for Lingbane Hydra means you have pretty much 4 base mineral saturation, and you have 5 gases, so you can just slam out a whole bunch of units that trade pretty well against the Terran.
Yeah, one thing I have trouble with, like in this game I lost my third, which was bad, but even if I do, manage to hold the third and drone it up, like I tend to play a heavy Ling style, and I usually just run out of larva, and so I'm like trying to get a 4th and a macro hatch. Mm-hmm. And I guess I just have a hard time with that aspect of it, is getting enough larva out. And so when I do go like Lingbane Hydra, a lot of times I'll just hold down the Hydra button because I don't have enough larva to spend any money.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I'm just taking my 4th too late, or if I need a macro hatch earlier, or what.
So the trick with Legacy of the Void, we only get 3 larvae per inject now. It used to be 4. As soon as you hit your 3 base mineral, you take a 4th base and a macro hatch at the same time. So those kind of go down together. This game you're playing catch up with larva because you lost your 3rd.
Yeah. So you just throw them both down together.
Yep. Queen's focusing Medivacs if they can. That's one of the things that I would probably say for this first session wouldn't be a primary thing to focus on, but in sessions moving forward, that's going to be one of the main things to work on. Because Queens have more range against air than they do against ground, and the air units are much more valuable than the ground units, especially energy units like Ravens or Banshees or Medivacs that gain value over time.
Right.
You're hanging in there though. 60 worker, 67. If you want to mix in some pressure against the opponent, we could talk a little bit about counterattacks and how to think about doing those. If you're looking to survive their pushes and deal some damage, it's important to understand the different ways that you can deal some crippling damage to the opponent without overcommitting to it. If you move your whole army to the Terran side of the map, they have defender's advantage with tanks and bio, which is usually bad news bears. But you can go for stuff like 8 Lings or 8 Banes if you sent them over here to the side and then into the natural. That's really high percentage. Usually the game will look like this in the mid game, where they're parading units from their production to their most precious base, the newest one, the third. And you can just run units in, and you don't have to do too much with those. And you would keep the majority of your army on creep, where you defend your third and your fourth.
And are you mostly just trying to keep them at home, or are you trying to get banelings into a mineral line kind of thing?
You're just trying to get some small edges from the opponent and divide their attention, because if they get to concentrate 100% of their attention on their main army, they're going to have great pre-splits, they're going to be baiting your army really well on your side of the map, and they're going to dictate the pace of the game. So it's kind of like fighting with the Terran for tempo in the match, or who's deciding where the action is going to be, and you're also forcing them to pay rent on their bases, because if you think about this expansion of the third, if their army isn't here, they have nothing. They have a couple barracks, there's no bunker. They do have a sensor tower, which counts for something. They have information at least. But it's not really a safe location. If Banes roll in, they can kill these SCVs. The natural has 1 missile turret, and that's it. So being able to put some small pressure on those bases is really, really annoying for Terran, because they have to pull their attention there. They have to say, all right, I need to dedicate units, or build a bunker, or both. Like the wing at the fort there, that's nice and annoying. Do you use the steal functions for your...
Yes, I do.
Okay, good. So what I do is, if I have my army that's kind of running around, I would box maybe half of these Lings and then tuck them away, and then I would poke or posture with my army somewhere and send the Lings into a different base. A lot of times you can deal really, really heavy damage if you kind of do a jab and then a strike at the same time. You give them 2 opportunities to fail instead of just 1. That's a nice run by, though. Nice.
Yeah.
Your worker count is really, really good. Of your fundamentals, that's a lot stronger than most players at your level, I think.
Floating a lot, though.
Yeah.
Usually do.
Well, it seems like your mid game is quite strong, but it's the early game where you weren't able to secure your third base, and you've kind of been always a little bit behind in larva.
Yeah.
Got that hive. Another good mechanic that really benefits Zerg army use is boxing your army into 2 groups and then smashing from 2 sides.
Yeah.
Instead of going in one path. I'll keep that as
Yeah,
well.
I think I just need to start making a point of doing that, just splitting the army. Like, I just don't.
Cool. GG.
Cool. So what are kind of the major, like, of all those things you've mentioned, what do you think, as it stands, are my biggest issues?
Probably your scouting in the beginning of the game. You haven't scouted in either of these games at around 4 minutes, so it's always kind of like, oh god, there's a ton of shit at my third base, and then you lose your third base. So if you get in the habit of, and I should add this as a note, your 4-minute sack overlord, and then make 2 overlords, we'll say 2 to 3, as you sack the overlord, then you'll be less surprised and you can prepare for stuff, because your ability to make drones is really good, and I've noticed your queen production is pretty consistent, but your caught off guard against their initial pressure, and pretty much every Terran is going to have some early aggression that's going to try and set you off balance. And if you smash that, then your third is safe and you can instantly take a fourth base. It's a really good knee-jerk reaction against Terran. If they have a bunch of Hellbat Banshee or Marine Medivac and they attack into you and lose a bunch of stuff, just snap take the fourth base instantly, because they're thinking about, all right, I lost stuff, now I need to make sure I defend my stuff if you go and counterattack me.
Right. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. Sweet. So we have a pretty good sense of ZVT and what to work on. Do you have some of the other matchups?
Yeah. Most of my ZVPs are pretty embarrassing.
Well,
I don't remember this one exactly. I think it's an okay one. I know this guy did like the double Archon drop. And I died eventually, somehow.
you're playing against a lot of Masters players. That's good.
I actually, if I play well, I feel like I can do pretty well. Like last night during that little automated tournament, like I beat a, Master 1 guy pretty decently. And then, I'll lose to somebody that I don't think I should lose to the next game. I feel like I'm pretty inconsistent.
Well, one of the things that everyone has as a property of being a human is your best, your average, and your worst. There's a book by Jared Tendler on poker, and he talks about it in terms of A game, B game, and C game. So if you're on your A game and you feel like you're playing really well relative to yourself, you can beat Masters players and everything feels good. Your B game is kind of what you normally do, the middle bit, and then your C game is the worst of it. But that's all you. And a lot of people, they identify as their A game. When they play their A game, that's me doing my stuff. But the C game is just, I don't know what's going on, I shouldn't lose. But everyone has that. Everyone has their C game sometimes and their A game other times. So being able to identify which of those you're playing, I think helps a lot with managing the tilt of losing games. Because if you know you're on C game, then you can boil down your session to a more simple principle, like, all right, I'm playing bad right now, I'm probably not going to rank up on ladder, but I can focus on my Overlord scouting. I've done that one a whole bunch, where I'll go on a big losing streak and I won't know what to do, what's going on, why I'm playing so bad, and I'll say, all right, if I get my Overlord scout at 4 minutes, then I've won. And I'm just going to treat my ladder practice on those terms of I'm going to focus on a fundamental that's not super great for me right now, and if I'm doing that, then I'm making progress as a player. I think that's really helpful. So we'll give you a trick for this map, and other maps have a similar principle. The first Overlord, if you want to get a really good scout, you go here first, which is kind of some dead space behind the base, and then you use this dead space here, and then you go into the main from this lower angle. Protoss players don't expect it, you're not likely to lose it to a stalker, and that usually spots their more valuable tech. And
so in that case, you just don't bother to check the front there?
Not really. If they're going for something like proxy, it could be anywhere really. It could be there, it could be whatever. They usually are going to take a base. Proxy 4 gateways, it's a decent build. You would want to build a bunch of spines behind your mineral line and make links and send them into their main. That's kind of a different evaluation when the zealots run in.
Right.
But I usually try and have my first Overlord go behind and then into the main. And my second Overlord, I like to put it maybe here, where you can see if they're taking a third at the low ground or if they're transferring a probe to take it at the high ground.
Cool. I'll do that.
Some ZVP timings to know. ZVP, you can go 330, 4-minute scout with first or second Overlord, or both, doesn't really matter. But the key thing is getting that scout. Let's look at your setup a little bit. So you went for a lair first and melee. So ZVP, you kind of have to go single Evo. There isn't really a double Evo build that I've ever felt good about in the matchup, and mainly that's because Protoss units are so gas heavy that if they're leveraging units against you and you have 150 gas into a Carapace upgrade, you're going to have a really bad time. So usually if you're going for Hydra Bane, the upgrade order is single Evo, melee 1 into melee 2, into range 1, into range 2, into Carapace 1, into melee 3, etc. So you can kind of take that sort of route.
Right.
And the lair in this case is good against the Dark Shrine build, but I think you've done it blind without scouting. And if they go for an Oracle, that lair isn't helping you at all, and you would want to be focusing more on drones and queens and stuff.
Yeah, like I said, I feel a little lost in this matchup, so that is kind of, that's good information about single Evo and all that.
4
I usually
minute
just
spore.
don't really know where to put my gas.
4 minute spore blind keeps you safe versus Oracle, and then 420 spore versus Twilight, and that's going to be versus the DT drop type of stuff.
And do you just delay the layer?
Yeah, you can take the layer before melee. Let's go to the 3:30 to 4 minute time and think about if you had landed that scout, what it would look like and what you should do.
Okay.
Because yeah, I think that would have allowed you to prepare a lot better for this type of setup. So let's say the Overlord didn't die to the Stalker. It's flying here right now by the beautiful undersea ferns and all that shit. And then you fly into the main and you see a Twilight and a Robo. Seeing the upgrade is nice, and then oh my goodness, you saw the Dark Shine as well. So the first thing you would want to do scouting all this is drone really hard, because you know that they've invested in a bunch of stuff that's going to pay off when the Dark Shrine is done and when the Prism is out. So you do have some time. So making some Overlords, you're going to be a little blocked here. I think taking melee is defensible. You could take melee and then take lair, take your 420 spores, and you want to go heavy on queens against this. So you have a means to pressure the Warp Prism quite a lot.
Yeah.
And Roach Warren is going to be the most sturdy way of dealing with Charge Lot Archon types of openings. If they go for a couple Archons, you can usually defend that with a few queens. But if they go for something like 4 to 6 Archons and Zealots, the Lings are just going to die, and you're going to be pretty dead. So
Yep.
I actually had a game at the beginning of stream today where someone went for that against me. They went for DT Archon Prism and then a big Archon Zealot type of attack. And I just had 3 bases and I was just pumping out roaches constantly and was able to defend. So we'll say against this DT Prism Robo Charge Lot type of thing, if you can get around 50 to 55 workers of roach production with roach speed and many queens, you're basically good. So that's one of the more popular openers. If you're against someone who's massing adepts, so we'll say 7 to 9 adepts, you can go for a bunch of lings at what magical time? 420?
Cool.
Make a big round of lings with melee upgrade. And then once you clean up the adepts, in that situation, they go for the big adepts. You surround them with your lings and your queens are helping fight them. Then you go and kill some probes between the second and third bases. That's a little bit of a window you get after they trade their adepts out. You can bust a base with the pylons and the mothership core and the overcharge and all that, but you can pick a few workers right here between the second and third bases.
Okay.
So that's another one, and then that can often include oracles, so just having lots of queens and then 1 spore per base helps you out with defending that. Those are the main key openings, I would say. If you see heavy sentry play, you can either go for Ravager, Wingbane, or you can kind of do as you did here, where you rush a lair, and then you go really heavy on Hydra. That's the other type of option.
Yeah. So when you get that like after that 4-minute scout, um, a lot of the times I won't see a dark shrine. Like I just assume it's you know, maybe it's somewhere else or maybe it's not, and like maybe I see the twilight. Um, how do you know if you've got a massive adepts coming or archons?
Your forelings are going to be poking up at the front wall. The zealot would tell you here, because
Okay.
if you see a zealot at the wall, they're not going to be shading a bunch of adepts at you. If they wanted to shade adepts at you, they want to get up to 7 to 9 adepts, and this zealot is one gateway cycle that is not an adept, which is very unfortunate for shading a bunch of adepts. And it also tells you that they want to save some gas. So if you see zealot stalker, it's more likely that they're going for dark shrine than if it was adepts. Adepts synergize really well with oracles, where they can just zoom across the map and try and kill a bunch of drones and stuff. Whereas with this opening, they're trying to squeeze as much of gas as they can into the DTs on the plane. Ninjas on a plane.
Got it. So basically, if I see a twilight and I see adepts, it's probably adepts.
Yeah, sometimes they'll go for the adept shade without the twilight. But yeah, the 2-point scout is you sack an overlord and you poke the natural wall.
Okay.
Put that for you.
Gotcha.
And with this many gateways in the wall, this looks like pretty heavy pressure. 2 to 3 gateways is usually enough for them to defend their third. If they're going for 4 gateways, it's going to be a little bit heavier on the pressure.
Okay.
Going robo. When the Protoss takes the third, you can take your fourth.
Well, and the 4 gates is usually a tell for the double archon, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And you would just want to have all your queens, and then you make constant queens to focus the prism as much as you can.
Okay.
Here,
And
the lings are almost worthless against the archons. It's usually going to be better to focus on harassing on their side of the map. They do have some overcharge, but I guess with the zealots, it's good for you to defend here. But this would all be a lot easier with some speed roaches.
Yeah. So is that just pretty much default response, like if there's archons coming, build roaches?
Yeah.
Okay.
And you can go back into Lingbane Hydra after you've pushed them back with the Roach Queen. There's a really nice timing you can do against people who go for this Zealot Archon business, where you have about 60 to 70 drones, 3-base saturation of a bunch of Roach Ravager, and you can go attack them with the Roach Ravager like here. All the money they've spent into the Archons, they did not spend into Immortals, which means Roaches are comparatively better. You can pressure this base, and if they're trying to counterattack you like this with a Prism, you just add 5 Roaches to your Queen group. So let's type that out for you a little bit. You can go for 60 to 70 worker Roach Ravager. Push. 5 Roaches plus Queens plus Overseer. Defends Prism while you attack. And that's going to be at around 150 supply. It's a really good time to hit. Because right now in the game, you're dead even on supply. So if you go and attack, by the time you get there, they're probably going to have more army than you. But Zerg has better production than Protoss, but worse units. So if you can leverage that to a point and then take a pretty decisive trade, then oftentimes you can either kill them or severely wound that third base, which also defends your fourth base.
What's the normal 4th base timing for a Protoss?
I would say this is pretty standard for your level, around, we'll say before 10 minutes at some point. Ideally you would have Overlord speed and you would be Overseer scouting. But if you attack at around 140 supply, and let's say you didn't lose your 4th base and your macro is cleaner, this would be around the time when your big attack would be hitting their 3rd or their 4th, whichever you want to hit. You have 2 options on this map. You can bust these rocks and then attack in with even ground, or this way is a little bit faster. You can go uphill and then attack into the 3rd this way.
Okay. Yeah, I think like normally my kind of vague plan for ZVP is to build a bunch of Hydra Bane and try to keep them off of a 4th.
Yeah. Hydra Bane as a unit composition is one that whenever Hydras and Banes both got the HP buff, it just felt straight up overpowered against Protoss. But Protoss has figured out how to storm a whole bunch, and it's been a lot harder to just push people over with Hydra Bane. So one of the most effective ways to get your Hydra Bane play from a diamond level to a master level and a GM level is to take it at a 70-30 approach as opposed to a 100% this is my army, this is where I'm attacking. Because Storm is AoE, so the more that you're clumped up in one place, the more value they get from their AoE. So if you think about having a Hydraling Bane group as a Muta group, and then another group as an army group, you can posture with your army and do stuff like pressure this base and posture here where you pull a lot of their attention, and then you get your Muta group of Hydraling Bane, and you just run into the natural and just beat the crap out of them. So that's usually how you win with Hydra Bane. It's not really a good A-move composition against Protoss, but it's super fast and dangerous in your ability to kill probes and just wipe a base, and then retreat fast.
Got it. Yeah, I mostly just go Hydra Bane because I hear it's supposed to be strong, although it doesn't feel like it for me.
Yeah, it is strong, but it's not the type of strength that a lot of people expect. Because most people in most leagues are used to having, this is my army, I want to fight your army with my army, and hopefully I win. So when people say stuff like Hydra Bane is strong, people assume that that's what they mean. But what they mean is +2 attack Bane's one-shot probes. That is the core principle that makes Hydra Bane really strong. And if you're not hitting probes with your Hydra Bane, then you're not really getting value from the composition. If you want to A-move, then just going Mass Roach Ravager or Hydra Lurker or something would probably be better.
Yeah.
And that's +2 melee Banes. One-shot probes. Split Hydra Bane. 70-30 between army and harassment. Bane drops are nice. I think for a later session we can focus on that. But if you can kind of after this one focus on that 70-30 split, if you have a clean early to mid game, you're trying to get maxed out, you split at 70-30. I'm guessing you'll beat a lot of these opponents who have been beating you. And then once you move up, you're going to face opponents who are better at dealing that. So then the next step would be adding in this Overlord morphs to a drop Overlord, and you drop Banes into the natural.
Right. Yeah, I like that concept of thinking of a little chunk of army as mutas.
Yeah. Hydra Bane is super fast. So like that, you just got to nip away at a base and then just run away unpunished. Well, you lost a couple overseers, but...
I mean, I was dead a while ago, but...
Yeah. So, also get in the habit of taking Overlord speed in general.
Okay. So for 4 gas, 4 ZVP, what's kind of the standard way to spend gas?
4 gas and ZVP?
Like, I mean, if I, just at the very beginning, you know, I get 100 gas, I usually spend it on link speed, and then I don't really know what to do from there on.
What I usually like to do with gas spending, let's break this down a little bit. So that's, I gave you the upgrade progression, but for the early game, sometimes you don't want to take an upgrade based on what you scout. Link speed, first 100 gas. You can go melee, next 100 gas. While you scout, it's really important to scout at that point, and then versus Twilight, take Lair, versus Oracle, take Overlord speed. The reason for that is usually the follow-up to Oracle is either Void Ray or Phoenix, and they're going to be clearing your Overlords from the map. You want to keep those alive, and it also opens up the opportunity for Bane drops later on, and it makes your Overseers faster. And then against the Twilight, Lair, Roach speed, Overseer, Overlord speed. Players at your level probably won't punish your Overlord spread that much with Archons, but better and better Protosses are going to know that once they've done some DT stuff, they morph the Archons. If they can't kill your stuff, then they'll work on hunting your Overlords with the Prism Archon, and Overlord speed allows you to keep them alive. Okay. So the Oracle, you take Overlord speed, Bane Nest, And that's if they're going for Adepts. If they have a bunch of Adepts, Bane Nest can kind of beat those up. And then Lair, +2 melee. And then Hydra Den.
Okay. And do you ever pull drones off gas early game for ZVP?
I pull 2 workers off gas after Ling Speed. I'll put that in the notes. Which times out the melee upgrade really nicely, because you kind of want your melee upgrade to finish, and then your lair is also done around that time, and then you can go for +2 melee. That's the thing that you're kind of trying to rush in ZVP. +2 melee attack Banes are super strong, so getting +2 melee in a reasonable time is a really important threshold to reach.
Okay, cool.
Overlord Speed is a really good upgrade to take anytime you find yourself supply blocked and you have money, because it doesn't take supply, as long as you're not making queens at all your bases.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. Very cool. Well, I know it's 4, so...
We still have 15 minutes.
Okay. Would it make sense to watch a ZVZ, or do you think that's getting spread too thin?
Yeah, we can do ZVZ. I think it's nice to have a few things to focus on in each of the matchups. And ZVZ is different because you don't sack Overlords to scout, you use Lings to scout.
Right. Cool, alright. I had one I wanted to watch. Let me find it. Okay. So my game plan in ZVZ, I tend to play... I mean, I guess you have to play it pretty different, but... My kind of default build is to try to get to like a base and a half of drones and have a Bane Nest and then just play Ling Bane until one of us is dead.
That's what we call the 25 drone special. And it works up to WCS Challenger, so...
Okay.
ZVZ is a fighting game. I actually got coached by Panda Bear Me, who is a Challenger League Zerg. And whenever we play, he would say, yeah, I just kill everyone at 25 workers because Ling Bane control and positioning is so intricate that you can just outmuscle most players at that time. So we can look at your opening, and ZVZ is very early game focused where a couple missteps and you're dead. Yeah. The first key thing is making 6 Lings when your pool is done as opposed to 4, because that keeps you safer against 13-12. I say safer because there's so much micro involved that you can still lose.
Right. Yeah, I think as of probably this week, started often making 6 instead of 4, but I will go ahead and do that for sure. I usually die to 13-12.
Mm-hmm. Some quick notes on 13-12 defense. So we go 17 hatch, 18 gas, 17 pool, 19 overlord, 2 queens, 6 lings, ling speed. The 6 lings at the natural, the positioning for them is they sit between the ramp and the hatch. And basically their goal is mission impossible. Can we save the queen at the natural and allow her to get to the ramp? Because 2 queens at the ramp is the ultimate move against early game cheese with speedlings or banes or both.
Okay.
The only exception is if they're going for something like 12 pool, where they're trying to bite your base and kill it and then run home and expand behind it. In that case, you would pull 10 drones and bind them as they're your army, and just try and bait the lings off the hatch to buy time for your queens and your lings. So those are the two main cheesing scenarios would be against the 12 pool expand and against the 13-12.
Yeah, I usually do okay against the 12 pool. Like, I'll pull drones. I feel like I can often enough hold it off. But the 13-12, if they start rolling banelings in, I'm almost always dead. Like, I just have such a hard time dealing with banelings in that super early game.
Mm-hmm. 2 queens at the ramp will help a lot, and then you want to pull 1 drone out of the gas to make your bane nest. So you have 2 out of 3 in the gas.
Gotcha.
Going for your 3rd base. Usually 31 Overlord is pretty good. You could also take it at 30, just making 1 of them, and then continue to drone up. This is around the time when you would go for an attack. Third queen, I think, is fine. It means you're going to have a little bit less momentum for killing the opponent, but it's good for defending.
Yeah.
Oh. So let's talk about the initiative, because this is basically the situation that's the most important in ZVZ. Who gets to secure the third base? So you have 26 workers to 24. The primary objective is to hold your own third base. If you have, let's do some drone math. If you have 6 workers at your natural and spam Ling Bane, you are the front foot, the aggressor, and are trying to kill third and opponent, if possible. If you have, we'll say, 8 to 13, as you do here, you are attacking with maybe... I would say you should still be attacking, but you're going to expect to invest some heavy defense at your third as well. So let's say you're attacking and defending. Ideally, you defend with queens and banes, and you attack with lings. Even if you have the economy lead, attacking with lings is usually good. But one of the main weak points for the attacker is the moment when they're morphing their lings into banes. So we'll look with vision of both players at your third base and how they stage this attack. Okay, the first key thing we need to focus on too is overlords at the exit of the opponent's bases. That's the positioning for ZVZ. This is exit 1, and this is exit 2. If you have overlords in both of those spots, you'll see all the lings and banes coming out, and you shouldn't be surprised if you have awareness of the minimap. Which is kind of a big if, but it's good to have the vision. I'll put that in bold and red.
Right.
Overlords, scout exits from opponent base. Awesome. That will help loads.
I kind of have this idea that I'll put my overlord on the high ground so that they don't see it when they're running past.
Well, even if they see it, they can't do shit until mutas, so...
Well, right, but...
Unless they walk queens way out there, which they're just cutting into their injects so much that puts you ahead.
Right.
Okay, so their attack is being staged. They're biting this. Pulling back, you see Banes. Another thing is overlords at the entrances to your base. Oh, these are like sister principles. Overlords scout entrances to your base. Do the same thing in all matchups. That's another good process to have, is you have your forward overlords, and once you have 2 overlords that are forward scouting, you have your defense overlords, which scout the units that are coming into your base, so you have nice warning. I think having 1 overlord here, so you can see stuff coming this way, and then 1 overlord, I like to put it in the grass, where I can see if they're morphing banes behind that. I don't get surprised by that.
Okay. Yeah. So what would you have 3 forward overlords in ZVZ?
2.
2. Okay.
Probably the first 2, and then if it gets to the 3 base versus 3 base stage, and you have a layer, the next key scout is seeing the saturation at their third.
Okay.
So at this point, if you've lost your third, it's basically miracle time because you're very far behind.
Yeah.
The key thing to do is identify, all right, I had the edge of drones, but I just lost the edge of larva because the opponent killed my third, so I'm going to take the edge of gas and upgrades and stuff. So the 2 goals for ZVZ macro would be establishing the third and a mineral-based economy, or hitting 2 base saturation for either mutas or roaches. And you've lost your third, so they've put you into a position where you should go for the 2 base saturation.
Okay.
So
So
you
would I like wall off the ramp with Evos and just try to go like full on 2 base roach?
You don't need to wall off because you have Bane tech. You would just drone your 2 bases, take the 2 gases at the natural, layer Roach Ward, Evo, range attack, Roach speed, and then go for a Roach attack and take your third when you can afford it.
Gotcha.
So when losing third, drone 2 bases fully, with layer, Evo, range attack, Roach speed. I forgot Roach Ward. Nice. And that will be your approach to having fancier roaches. So if they have 3 hatches, they can potentially make more roaches but you took earlier gas because you had more drones early on. So you can have earlier +1, earlier +2, earlier roach speed.
Yeah.
And potentially earlier tunneling claws and stuff. If it does get to the layer tech stage, do you prefer roach or muta or what?
Usually roach. Yeah, usually roaches.
Cool. A really nice trick for this map is putting 4 lings here, morph them to Banes, posture with your lings on this side, and then move command the drones into the Banes into the drone line, and then you right click drones. That's a really easy win a lot of the time.
Cool.
A lot of the maps have those little opportunities where there's one obvious place where you can attack, the third is the obvious big target, and then the natural is the one where you can strike them really hard when you pull their attention one place. Okay, so we're super behind at this point. 58 to 30. If you're losing your third, you want to minimize the number of lings you make because you don't have the edge of larva. The person who's ahead in larva can make a lot of lings and it doesn't really hurt them that much, but every 2 lings you make could have been a drone, which weakens your rope transition.
Yeah, I think my idea was like, oh, he killed my third, I better go like kill his third or do damage or I'm dead, and then I just kind of fixated on that for way too long.
Yeah. Sometimes you do have an opening if they were to try and focus down your third and they lost all their lings and banes in the process, then sometimes you can move across and punish them. But in this case, they got a really good trade against you with banes against lings. So you did push them back, but they took a favorable trade with it, so they were able to defend and be ahead. Some different tech transitions for roach play. You can go burrow and tunneling claws is one option. You can also go for the Hydra lead, or a few infestors with burrow, or you can go for heavy roach ravager type of play. I think all of those are viable. It kind of depends on preference and also what you're up against.
Yeah. So usually if we're on roughly even footing and the opponent goes Hydras, I'm usually happy, because I feel like if I don't bother with Hydra tech and I just make a bunch of roaches, I feel like I usually win that fight. Does it make sense to do Hydra?
Well, Hydra is a very good unit, but it doesn't retreat against roaches. Roaches are faster than Hydras, so if a player attacks with Hydras and they aren't able to win the fight, then they're going to lose all their Hydras. And Hydras are more expensive, so that's really bad.
Yeah.
But they're very high DPS, and they're good against mutas. If you're ahead, you can often just push with Hydras and win the game.
Yeah.
But if you're against Hydras, you can take a Ravager lead and try and punish them with Biles, or you can go and try and counterattack and base race and stuff.
Cool.
Knowledge.
Yeah. It's always surprising how much that is a factor in StarCraft, just knowing what to do.
Yep. For real. There are a lot of really fast gamers. Like, you could snag any pro gamer from Dota or CS or League of Legends and stuff, and it's tough to move up in the leagues just because there's so much about knowing what to do next and what to prioritize in your games.
Yeah.
So I've got a nice bit of notes for you, and the class with the build order that I use and how to adjust it and that sort of thing, and then I also link the current replay pack that I put together this week.
Oh, perfect.
Great working with you.
No, this was even more helpful than I had hoped. This was really great.
Awesome. Well, go get him.
Cool.
May the storm be with you.
Before I forget, how do I pay you?
PayPal. You can either do it through the Twitch alerts thing, or you can just send the 30 directly to the Neuro@Gmail PayPal.
Okay. Is it all right if I just go ahead and pay you for the next, I was thinking like 3 sessions and then maybe go from there? Or?
I would not be upset if you did that.
Okay, cool. Good to know.
Yep. Good luck, have fun,
All
dude.
right. Yeah, thanks. Thanks again. This was awesome.
Swarm them. Hype. Is it TLO? What's up, Ilya Brad?